Dean Martin walks onto the Tonight Show set like he always does, loose, smiling, glass in hand. The audience erupts. Johnny stands to greet him, and Dean gives him that signature half hug, the kind that says, "We've done this 1,000 times." They sit. The jokes come easy. Dean's timing is perfect. 8 minutes in, he's talking about a party at Sammy's house, something about a bartender and a missing tuxedo. The audience is howling. Then Dean says, "You know what's funny, Johnny?" And Johnny, still grinning, says, "What's that, Dean?" Dean looks down at his glass. He swirls it once, twice. Then he looks up, and his face has changed completely. Nothing. Nothing's funny anymore. Johnny's smile fades. This is November 1987. Dean Martin is 70 years old. He's been coming on The Tonight Show since the mid-60s, back when the show was still in New York. He and Johnny have a rhythm. Dean plays the lovable drunk. Johnny plays the straight man who's just sober enough to catch the punchlines. It's comfortable. It's safe. The audience knows what they're getting. But tonight, something is different. Dean had called the producers 3 days earlier. He wanted to come on. No new album, no movie, no Vegas run to promote, just wanted to sit with Johnny. The bookers were surprised, but didn't question it. "Dean Martin asking to be on your show? You say yes." When he arrived at NBC that afternoon, the staff noticed he seemed quieter than usual. Not unfriendly, just distant. He didn't do his usual walkthrough of the set, didn't crack jokes with the crew. He sat in his dressing room for 2 hours, door closed. One production assistant knocked to ask if he needed anything. Dean said no, just needed to think. By the time the show starts, though, he seems fine. He walks out to that massive applause, does the bit with the glass, sits down, and launches into a story about playing golf with Bob Hope. The audience eats it up. Johnny's laughing. Everything feels normal. But Dean's hands won't stay still. Johnny notices it first, around the 6-minute mark. Dean's holding his glass, but he keeps adjusting his grip, switching hands, setting it down, picking it back up. It's subtle, the kind of thing you'd miss if you weren't watching closely. But Johnny's been doing this for 25 years. He knows when someone's performing at him instead of with him. Dean finishes the Bob Hope story. The audience applauds. Johnny sets up the next question, something light about Dean's kids. Dean smiles, starts to answer, then stops. "You know what's funny, Johnny?" Johnny leans back, still in host mode. "What's that, Dean?" Dean swirls his glass. Once, twice, nothing. Nothing's funny anymore. The audience doesn't know how to react. A few people laugh, assuming it's setup, but the laugh dies fast because Dean isn't smiling. Johnny isn't smiling. The band, which had been softly vamping under the conversation, goes quiet. Johnny doesn't fill the silence. That's the thing about Johnny Carson that people forget. He knew when to wait. Dean looks down at the glass in his hand. "This is water, you know." Johnny nods slowly. "I know, Dean. I haven't had a real drink in 3 years." The audience is completely silent now. This isn't part of the act. Everyone can feel it. Dean sets the glass down on Johnny's desk. His hand is shaking, not trembling. Shaking. "The whole thing," he says quietly. "The whole drunk thing. You knew that, right?" "I knew," Johnny says, "but people believed it. And after a while, I didn't know how to be anything else." Dean's voice is steady, but there's something underneath it now. Something raw. "You get stuck, Johnny. You get stuck playing the guy everyone wants you to be." Johnny doesn't look at the camera, doesn't look at the audience. He's looking at Dean. Just Dean. "What happened, Dean?" Dean takes a breath, lets it out slow. "My boy, Dino." His voice cracks on the name. He stops, tries again. "My son died, March 21st, fighter jet, training exercise in California." The audience gasps. Some people didn't know. It had been in the papers, but not everyone follows that kind of news. And Dean Martin's son, Dean Paul Martin, actor, tennis player, Air National Guard pilot, wasn't as famous as his father. But to Dean, he was everything. "He was 35, Dean continues. His eyes are wet now, but he's not crying. Not yet. He had a little girl. She's 4. And he stops, closes his eyes. "I wasn't there, Johnny. I was in Vegas, playing the drunk, making people laugh." Johnny doesn't move, doesn't interrupt. This is the moment when a lesser host would have tried to comfort, would have reached for the easy sentiment, would have shifted to commercial. But Johnny knows this isn't about him. This is about Dean needing to say something he hasn't been able to say. "I got the call at 3 in the morning, Dean says. They told me the plane went down in the San Bernardino Mountains. Told me they were searching. I flew back. Waited. They found wreckage. They found pieces, but they never found him. Not all of him. The camera stays on Dean's face. The director doesn't cut away, doesn't zoom out. This is raw. This is real. I did a show 2 weeks later, Dean says, and now there's anger in his voice. Not at Johnny, at himself. 2 weeks, my boy's gone, and I'm on stage in Vegas doing the same act, the same jokes, the glass, the stumble, and people laughed. They laughed, Johnny. You were working, Johnny says quietly. You were doing what you know how to do. No. Dean shakes his head. I was hiding. I've been hiding my whole life. The silence that follows is the loudest moment in Tonight Show history. The audience isn't breathing. The crew isn't moving. Even Ed McMahon, sitting off to the side, has gone completely still. Dean finally looks at Johnny. Really looks at him. I don't know how to do this without the bit, Johnny. I don't know who I am if I'm not making people laugh. Johnny leans forward. His voice is low, almost private, but the microphone catches it. You're Dean Martin. You're a father. You're a man who lost his son, and you're sitting here telling the truth. That's who you are. Dean's face crumples, just for a second. Then he pulls it back together, forces a smile, the Dean Martin smile, the one he's been using for 50 years. I'm sorry, he says. I didn't mean to do this. I thought I could come out here and just talk, like we used to. You are talking, Johnny says. You're doing exactly what you need to do. Dean picks up the glass of water, takes a sip. His hand is steadier now. You know what the worst part is? He doesn't wait for Johnny to answer. I keep expecting him to call. Every morning I wake up and for about 5 seconds I forget, and then I remember, and I have to lose him all over again. Johnny doesn't say anything. There's nothing to say. Sometimes the most powerful thing a host can do is nothing. Dean sets the glass down, looks out at the audience. I'm sorry, folks. I know you came here to laugh. A woman in the front row speaks up. Her voice is soft but clear. We love you, Dean. The audience erupts, not in applause, in something deeper, in recognition, in grief, in shared humanity. Dean's face breaks again, but this time he doesn't hide it. He just nods, whispers, thank you. Johnny reaches across the desk, puts his hand on Dean's arm. You want to take a break? Dean shakes his head. No, I'm okay. He takes another breath, looks at Johnny. Can I tell you something else? Anything. He loved flying. Dino, from the time he was a kid. I used to take him up in little prop planes, and he'd just light up. When he joined the Guard, I was terrified. But he was so happy, Johnny. He was doing what he loved. That matters, Johnny says. Does it? Dean's voice cracks. Does it matter if he's gone? Johnny doesn't answer right away. When he does, his voice is careful, honest. I think it has to. I think if it doesn't, then we're saying love doesn't matter, and I don't believe that. Dean stares at him for a long moment, then nods. Yeah, okay. The rest of the interview is quieter, slower. Dean talks about his grandson, about Dino's daughter, who looks just like her father, about trying to figure out how to be there for her when he can barely function himself. He talks about his ex-wife, Jean, and how they've been leaning on each other in ways they never did when they were married. Johnny asks gentle questions, lets the silences breathe, doesn't push. When the segment ends, there's no comedy bit, no musical guest waiting in the wings. Johnny just thanks Dean for coming, for being honest, for trusting the audience with his pain. Dean stands, Johnny stands. They hug. Not the showbiz hug from the beginning of the segment, a real one. Dean's shoulders shake. Johnny holds him. The camera stays wide. When Dean finally pulls back, he wipes his eyes, looks at the audience. Thanks for listening, he says. His voice is hoarse. I needed that more than you know. The applause is different this time, softer, more reverent. Dean walks off stage, doesn't wave, doesn't do the signature walk, just walks. Johnny sits back down at his desk, looks at the camera. His eyes are red. We'll be right back, he says quietly. The screen fades to commercial. According to people who were in the studio that night, the commercial break lasted twice as long as usual. Johnny didn't move from his desk. Ed came over, put a hand on his shoulder. Johnny just nodded. When the show came back, Johnny did a shorter than usual monologue, kept it light, kept it simple, didn't mention what had just happened. He didn't need to. Dean Martin made only 2 more appearances on The Tonight Show after that night. Both times, he was quieter, softer. He told stories about his grandkids, about learning to cook, about taking long drives through the desert and just thinking. He never did the drunk bit again. In December 1995, 8 years after that interview, Dean Martin died of acute respiratory failure. He was 78 years old. In his final years, he'd become a recluse, stayed home, saw almost no one. But according to his daughter Deanna, he watched that Tonight Show interview sometimes. She'd find him in his study, the tape playing on the VCR, paused on Johnny's face during that long silence. "I think," Deanna said years later, "it was the first time my father let anyone see him. The real him, not the act, not the persona, just him." Johnny Carson never talked about that interview publicly, but when Dean Martin died, Johnny sent a private letter to the family. In it, he wrote, "Dean gave me the greatest gift a guest can give a host, his trust. I've never forgotten that night. I never will." The Tonight Show aired for 8 more years after Dean's death. Johnny retired in 1992, but the show lived on. Thousands of episodes, tens of thousands of guests. But that November night in 1987, when Dean Martin stopped being funny and started being human, remains one of the most powerful moments in the show's history. Because sometimes the most important thing television can do isn't entertain. Sometimes it's just witness.